2023 was quite an intense year, to say the least. There were too many things going on in the world to discuss in this one video, especially seeing as that's not what this channel's about. There were plenty of good catches on the railways, but, to be honest, it was also where my mental state reached its absolute lowest point, and now I get a sour taste in my mouth whenever I see DL's 9688 and 9740 again. Surprisingly, it wasn't all doom and gloom. For starters, I was lucky enough to catch up with 12 of my old mates from the school I went to between 2014 and 2017. Frankly, I'm grateful to still have any friends at this point, and I don't take the rare catch-ups for granted. Out of all the locomotives and multiple units I saw this year, it was very hard to pick one solid favourite, but I think I can narrow the candidates down to the following 14. J1234, DBR 1199, DC 4041, DXR 8007, DXB 5137, WA 165, DL 9792, DXC 5212, D16, DG 772, Gans Marvag EM 1373 with ET 3373, DC 4260, F180, and EF 3163. J1234 is a 482 steam locomotive built by the North British Locomotive Company of Glasgow, Scotland in 1939. Like her 39 classmates, she originally had the distinctive streamlining that was eventually reinstated on J1211 in preservation. But in her current state, 1234 looks more like a JA. This is mainly because of the absence of streamlining, but also because the twin air pumps up front were replaced with a single cross-compound air pump, which is located just in front of the firebox on the left-hand side of the locomotive. 1234's only other surviving classmate, JB1236, retains the twin air pumps in their original location. 1234 is part of the Steam Incorporated fleet, and although she hasn't run under her own power since the 1990s, she is occasionally brought outside for static display on open weekends, like the one held in January 2023. To be honest, I enjoyed seeing J1234 more than JA1271, despite the fact that A. 1234 wasn't in Steam, and B. I actually got to drive 1271. I spent a total of around 2 hours on the J's footplate, pretending to be the driver and giving other visitors some basic information regarding the locomotive and what functions the different controls carried out. All in all, I had fun on 1234's footplate. That and her relative obscurity makes her one of my highlights from this year's railfanning adventures. DBR 1199 is a former EMD G8, or New Zealand Railway's DB class locomotive, originally built in 1965 and rebuilt in 1980. Out of the 17 DB locomotives that were built, 10 were rebuilt as the DBR class in the early 80s. In 2003, DBR 1199 and two of her classmates, 1226 and 1254, were repainted in the Max Blue livery for commuter service in Auckland. 1226 was only intended as a backup and never carried the Max logo, while 1199 and 1254 traditionally worked in top and tail formations with the ex-Queensland Rail SX coaches. Although DBR's 1239 and 1241 were scrapped in 2008, and none of the unrebuilt DBs were saved, the rest of the class remained in service well into the KiwiRail era, with the last member of the class, DBR 1226, not being withdrawn until April 2017. After withdrawal from KiwiRail service, the DBRs not purchased by the Glenbrook Vintage Railway were sold to DBM Contracting and sent for storage at Steam Incorporated's depot in 2019. It wasn't until November 2022 when those engines were taken out of the yard and hauled down to Wellington by a DL. Then DBRs 1199 and 1282 were transferred to the Goldfields Railway in Waihi, initially going by rail all the way to Mount Maunganui via Hamilton, then up to Waihi on a truck trailer. It didn't take long before the two engines started hauling passenger trains on the Waihi to Waikino route, and I had a cab ride in both locomotives less than a week after seeing J1234 in Paekakariki. DBRs 1199 and 1282 are still owned by DBM Contracting, and they're quite special to me because it's absolutely surreal to have locomotives this big preserved on my local heritage line. DC 4041 is a rebuilt EMD G12, originally known as the New Zealand Railway's DA class. 146 of these things were built between 1955 and 1967, and 85 of them were rebuilt as the DC class between 1978 and 1983. In the specific case of DC 4041, she was originally built in July 1966 as DA 1507 and rebuilt in 1978. I remember seeing this locomotive in Mount Maunganui a few times, back when she was still painted in the TransRail blue livery. Sometime between 2011 and 2013, she was repainted in KiwiRail colours, and I remember seeing 4041 hauling the M52 shunt out of Hautapu in November 2016. Then, in July 2017, while I was on my way to the Coromandel Peninsula for a trip to the Driving Creek Railway, we randomly saw DC 4041 in Waharoa. She had just uncoupled from the front of a Metroport train, then turned round on the triangle before heading back towards Hamilton. This is the footage I recorded on that day. 2 years later, in July 2019, DC 4041 randomly appeared in Mount Maunganui less than a week after I came back from a holiday down the central North Island. That was the last time I remember seeing this particular DC before 2020, when she joined a quartet of DCs that was sold to Martinus Rail and exported to the state of Queensland, Australia. I found the DC idling at Auckland's Westfield Yard on New Year's Day 2021. Presumably this was right after she had been brought up the main trunk from Wellington. Weirdly, DCs 4571 and 4041 have since returned to New Zealand, and I saw them parked at Glenbrook Station, of all places, in February 2023. Apparently they were meant to help with the City Rail link, but were whisked off to Wellington in July. And they're still parked in Thorndon Yard at the time of uploading. DXR 8007, originally built in 1976 as DX 2633, later renumbered to DX 5362 and rebuilt in 1993, is special to me for a variety of reasons, mainly because her and 8022 were once common sights here in Tauranga before the DL class invaded. Then, in April 2023, I had the pleasure of riding behind a DXR 8007 on the coastal Pacific from Christchurch to Picton and back. My favourite section of the main North Line was the long coastal section between Clavely and Whāroanui, but it was also cool standing at the Dublin Street crossing in Picton and watching DXR 8022 and DXC 5287 coming back from Blenheim. I made sure to pan round at just the right moment, in order to get both DXRs in the same shot. When I went down to Christchurch again in October, I happened upon DXR 8007 once again, but this time it was on the very early morning train 717, with the second locomotive being DXC 5264. DXB 5137, formerly DX2612, was built by General Electric of the USA in 1972 as the 13th example of the once 49-strong DX class. Apparently, this was the first locomotive to ever be repainted in the old International Orange or Fruit Salad livery. She is also significant as one of only 5 DXs to ever receive the early KiwiRail Phase 1 livery, and the only one of those 5 to have her cab painted yellow instead of grey. The other Phase 1 DXs were 5039, 5097, 5143 and 5293. 3 of them have since been spoiled at Hut workshops. 5137 was repainted very soon after KiwiRail's launch in July 2008, but it wasn't until April 2023, long after her transfer to the South Island, when I finally saw her in person. She was running the W4 coal shunt from Middleton Yard to the Port of Lyttelton and back with DXR 8022, with the second and final DXR having been rebuilt from DX 5235 in the mid-2000s. WA165 is a 262 tank engine that's preserved in Gisborne, as one of the city's major tourist attractions. She was built by NZR's own Hillside Workshops in Dunedin back in 1898, as one locomotive in a class of 11, not counting the 4 WAs that were converted from J-class 260s. 165 is now the sole survivor of her class, and these days she runs seasonal excursion trains from Gisborne to Muriwai and back. This run is very strange because, not long after leaving the city, the railway crosses the runway at Gisborne Airport. What's equally weird are the coaches. 3 of them are actually heavily rebuilt FM guards vans, with one of them even retaining a largely unmodified module from her original design. These rebuilt FMs are actually quite pleasant to ride in, due to their use of air conditioning. At the time of uploading, I've been to Gisborne twice, but it wasn't until early June 2023 when I finally saw WA165 in steam. As expected, the excursion was very popular, and I was allowed to have a look on the footplate before we left for Muriwai. More recently, in October, I saw W192 at the Ferrymead Railway, and I realised that the WA was pretty much a direct descendant of the too-strong W class. It might surprise some people to see a DL on this list, but 9792 is still significant to me for one main reason, which I will explain shortly. The DL class is kind of like the Class 66 of the New Zealand Rail Network, now being the most common diesel locomotive type on KiwiRail's books, with 73 examples of this class having been built between 2010 and 2023. 9792 is from the batch of 10 DLs that were shipped from China to Mount Maunganui in late March, before getting towed over to Hamilton behind DL 9671 on Sunday, April 2. And until the Stadler-built DM class arrives, DL 9792 is the newest locomotive on KiwiRail's books. More recently, in July 2023, I saw DL 9792 hauling a works train down to KiwiRail, and the memory of that strange sight, where the crew were unloading new concrete sleepers, is why 9792 is getting a special mention in this video. DXC 5212 is a locomotive I had wanted to see for many years, especially after she was overhauled and equipped with electronic fuel injection. That happened in November 2020, and 3 of her class have since received the EFI upgrade as well, numbers 5039, 5391 and 5454. As for 5212, I didn't get to see the damn thing until October 2023. When I finally did, she was running the TranzAlpine passenger train from Christchurch to Greymouth with classmate DXC 5229. D16 is a 240 tank engine built in 1878 by Nielsen and Company of Glasgow. The original New Zealand Railway's D-class, of which 35 were built, is not to be confused with the weird D1 thing built in 1929. Thinking back to D16, she is normally based at the Pleasant Point Railway near Te Maru, with a 462 Pacific for company, and said Pacific is AB 699. But in October 2023, she was moved by road up to the Ferrymead Railway in Christchurch, where I saw her running under her own power alongside F13 and D140. This was quite significant because I had never seen D16 before, and the only time I had ever seen a complete D-Class 240 before was when I saw D170 at Helensville Station in November 2019. DG772 is a classic English electric diesel locomotive, built in 1955. The DG class had a decently long service life, lasting from 1955 to 1983, but they were quite underpowered with only 750 horsepower from a little 6-cylinder prime mover. 772 is one of 4 DGs to survive into preservation. She is owned by the Diesel Traction Group and based at the Ferrymead Railway. A few of the lads, myself included, were allowed to climb up and have a look in DG772's cab and engine room. This was also the first time I had ever gotten good photographs of a DG. I noticed that the cab was very cramped, to the point where a curve had to be cut into the back wall just to allow people to get around the back of the seat. It's no wonder why some of the DGs were rebuilt with bigger, albeit uglier, cabs. The preserved Gans Marvag electric multiple unit, consisting of motor car EM1373 and a trailer car ET3373, was built in 1982, and she's very special to me for a couple of reasons. Not only because I've always liked the Gans Marvag units, and have fond memories of when they used to run suburban services in Wellington, but also because this is the so-called Super Gans, the result of an experimental one-off refurbishment carried out in 2010. This was the only EM/ET set to ever carry Metlink colours, and following withdrawal in 2016, she now belongs to the Canterbury Railway Society in Christchurch. EF 3163 is an example of a once 22-strong class of electric locomotives, built by Brush Traction of Loughborough, England in 1987 and 1988. They were built specifically for the Palmerston North to Hamilton section of the North Island main trunk, which is electrified at 25,000 volts AC supplied by overhead wires. To say that the EFs have had a rocky service life would be an understatement, and 3163 was the first of her class to be refurbished. But, of course, the refurbishment program has made frustratingly slow progress over the last 4 years. It is a criminally rare thing to find EFs in operation, especially the refurbished ones, and I was lucky to see EF 3163 at Te Kuiti station on Thursday, November 30. Although the footage was filmed by my anonymous Melbourne correspondent, I'm still going to include the Comminge electric multiple units in this highlights reel. These trains, which first entered service between 1981 and 1988, are now the oldest EMUs still running regular services on the Melbourne suburban network, alongside the more modern Siemens Nexus, Alstom Extrapolis 100 and high-capacity metro trains. This mate of mine has filmed the Comminge EMUs on the Craigieburn line, where they can be seen running passenger services alongside the newer and, in my opinion, more boring Siemens Nexus units. As for trams, these are still just as important to me as they've always been, although it's absolutely criminal that none of the country's original tram networks are left, not even the ones in Auckland. Throughout the year, I went to Auckland's Museum of Transport and Technology many times, as well as the much smaller operation at Wynyard Quarter at least once. There were also the tram lines in central Christchurch and Ferrymead Heritage Park. The latter was only visited in October. For personal reasons, my favourite catch on any of the tram lines will always be ex-Melbourne W2 class number 321. My second favourite tram, out of all the ones I saw this year, was Christchurch number 152. But the absolute strangest trams I remember seeing in 2023 have to be the restaurant tram in central Christchurch, which is ex-Melbourne W2 class number 411, and ex-Brisbane Drop Centre Double Saloon number 236 on the Ferrymead line. I didn't even know Brisbane ever had a tram system before seeing 236. Briefly shifting the subject away from non-railway topics, there was one especially significant discovery I made on YouTube in around March of this year, namely Brett Cooper and her show called The Comments Section. Without taking any of the political twaddle into account, I still enjoy watching Brett's videos because A, she seems to be one of the few sane people on the internet these days, B, she doesn't apologise or bend over backwards for certain people at the expense of her own values, and C, I learnt from watching the comments section that you shouldn't worry about what other people say, and stick with what you feel is important. The idea reminds me of the opening lines from the Dire Straits song News. I've also found that her videos are very quotable, or at least they can be, with one of her notable lines being, "Not everybody's going to like you. Not everybody's going to like what you're doing. You cannot make everybody happy. You cannot please everybody. And the moment you let that go, especially if you are an online person or if you do anything in the public eye, the happier you will be. Because who cares? Not everybody's going to like it." That comes from a video in which she discusses her casting as Snow White in the Daily Wire's upcoming film Snow White and the Evil Queen. It sounded like she was repeating similar points a few times. Another quote of hers, that I've used as an ideal mindset for whenever I review Train Sim World 4 content, is, "Do not compromise your values for anybody," from her video called Don't Give Up Your Morals for a Date. If you're thinking that I'm only singing Brett's praises just in a desperate attempt to get her attention, you're wrong. Although I don't agree with everything she says or does, and I have no interest in ever getting a Daily Wire Plus membership, it's important to give people credit where it's due, and I know damn well that, as a complete nobody, especially when compared to Brett, living in faraway New Zealand, I'll probably never meet her, and there would never be any point in trying to become more than friends because she's already engaged. I found that out as I was riding the number 29 bus from Christchurch's airport to the city's main bus interchange on October 19. Incidentally, I made a parody of the comments section in July 2023, using Thomas the Tank Engine characters in Trains Railroad Simulator 2019, and that parody is imaginatively titled The Comments Siding. Other noteworthy YouTubers I've discovered this year include, but are not limited to, Taste Set, Sydney Watson, Jesse Grant, Oceanliner Designs, and A Disaster Breakdown. I've just realised that all but one of those channels are Australian. What are the odds? Those lads, and ladies, in Sydney and Disaster Breakdown's case, discuss the railways in Melbourne, political issues, films, old-fashioned ships, and aviation disasters respectively. Quite a wide variety, I know. And if that's not a good indication of where my interests lie, I don't know what is. And if I remember to do so, I'll leave links to all these channels in the description. There was also a large collection of songs that I discovered this year, all very distinctive and, dare I say, special to me for their own unique reasons. The songs in question are Someone Saved My Life Tonight from Elton John, Broken English from Marianne Faithfull, Our Lips Are Sealed from The Go-Go's, Sunglasses at Night from Corey Hart, Separate Ways (Worlds Apart) from Journey, No Tengo Dinero from Ruigera, Rock You Like a Hurricane from The Scorpions, Life in a Northern Town from Dream Academy, I Hate Myself for Loving You from Joan Jett and the Black Hearts, and Silent Lucidity from Queen's Reich. I do prefer older music over the more modern stuff, especially the rock music from around the 1980s, and a bit of synth pop if that No Tengo Dinero thing is anything to go by. Due to my fierce and unrelenting hatred of radio edits, I only listen to the longer album or 12-inch extended versions of these songs if they exist. The reason why I fiercely hate radio edits is because, if I find a song that I really like, I want it to go on for as long as possible, hence my rigid preference for albums and 12-inch extended versions. After all that rambling, we've finally come to the rail fanning highlights reel itself, so feel free to get a cup of tea, or whatever your preferred drink may be, then sit back and relax.